Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Waste my time with small claims court, will ya? My mother passed away in 2016, and one of the ways to keep her memory alive is to tell one of my favorite stories about her. I grew up in an Air Force town, and my mother worked on the base, and it wasn't uncommon for spouses of people stationed at the base to offer babysitting services. More often than not, you would stay with a babysitter as long as you possibly could. This story takes place sometime in 1989. My sisters and I had been getting watched by a woman whose husband was in the Air Force and living in base housing. One day, while I was at school and my sisters were getting babysat, my mother received an urgent call at work. There's been a fire. She's told that everyone's okay, but that there's been a fire. As it turns out, the woman kept cigarette lighters in damn near every room in her house. The 3-year-old kid she also babysat got hold of one of the lighters and set one of the bedrooms on fire. Needless to say, my mother tells this babysitter that she will no longer be requiring her services. Mom finds another sitter, and she thinks that's the end of it. Then the phone calls start coming from this babysitter telling my mother that she still owes her $20 for the previous week, which wasn't the case since my mother had paid her at the start of the week. The arrangement was to get payment for the week that was to come. My mom told her to pound sand, considering that her carelessness could have resulted in my 2 sisters becoming seriously hurt. A short time later, my mother receives a notice that she is to appear in county small claims court over this $20. My mother once again tells this babysitter to go to hell and that she'll see her in court. For reasons unknown to me, it was decided that she ended up having to pay her the $20. The only reason I can gather is that the fire took place on a Friday and there was no advance notice of her not being needed any longer. The judge told my mother that she has 30 days to pay her by cash or check. Late 80s, no debit cards. My mother did exactly as she was instructed, by writing this woman 40 checks for 50 cents. I was told later by my mother that she spent what seemed like an hour writing out the checks one after the other. I then asked her why. Her reply was that both her and the babysitter had accounts at the same bank, and she knew that you could only cash 5 personal checks a day. It may be the most deviously brilliant thing I've ever seen. And our second story. You want me to waste company money schmoozing the wrong guys? Okay. A number of years ago, I worked for a recruiting company that serviced a major automotive plant in the U.S. This was the first of its kind built in the U.S. and had just recently opened. Now, typically for my company, a business manager, owner, administrator would give us hiring orders for new employees. Usually it's someone in charge who decides to hire new people. With this company, the administration handed the hiring decision to the new hire trainers. Then those trainers would give us the order. I love these trainers. They were deeply religious, family-oriented guys. Both of them adopted children from rough homes while I knew them. Both were extremely kind and welcoming to my new hires I was sending in, which can be rare in an automotive plant. They'd go on missions with their church to help in struggling areas. While I'm not religious at all myself, I loved how passionate these guys were and how it reflected in working alongside them. The plant lowered production and our orders for the new hires slowed. My manager started getting on my butt. Hey, go ask Bill and Ted if there's any new hires they need. Take them to dinner and see if you can talk them into more employees. I explained repeatedly to my boss that Bill and Ted do not make hiring decisions. Those decisions come way over their head and they just relay it. I was told I'm new to this business and don't understand how networking works. Finally, my boss's boss got on my butt when he was in the region for a meeting. I needed to push these guys to make new orders. So I checked my limits for how much I could spend schmoozing clients. Then I took these guys all around town for months. A new steakhouse opened. You guys want to try? Bring your wives and let's go. You want to hit the billiards club for lunch? The whole ticket's on me. Office want breakfast burritos and coffee delivered? Send your orders in and I'll bring it on my way. At some point, I figured there would be some backlash over the money I was spending. I even found the max I was allowed to tip and was maxing it out every time to give out more money to the waitresses. I was wrong. The plant cycled up again, and I think my managers believed those new orders came from the money I was spending and not just typical ebbs and flows of auto manufacturing. Eventually, I left the industry, and these guys moved on to other jobs. We had a blast on the company dime while it lasted. And our next story. don't complain about noise that isn't there. A couple years back, my boyfriend, baby, and I lived on the third top floor of an apartment complex. We're gone 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day and are pretty quiet people. The complex was brand new, and we were some of the first people to move in. Our baby was just about 2 years old and was in bed by 8 p.m. every day. We had a nice family that lived under us for about 8 months. After that, an older woman and her dog and sister moved in. They'd never lived in apartments before. I was friends with the staff at the office, so instead of writing us up about complaints, they'd always call me. I'd never had a complaint before, but as soon as this woman moved in downstairs, she made our life hell. She was constantly calling the office saying we were being too loud past quiet hours, 10 p.m., when we were already asleep in bed. Having a child and full-time jobs is exhausting. On the weekends, she'd take a broom or something and pound on the ceiling if she thought we were walking too loudly. Half the time, we were walking on a carpeted area and not even in the room where she was pounding on the ceiling. It made no sense to me. Fast forward. After 2 to 3 months of dealing with her complaints, I'd get calls from the office stating we were being too noisy when none of us were even home. We actually had friends over one night. We were sitting around talking, nothing loud or rambunctious going on. Of course, she called the office multiple times and left messages saying we were being too loud and disrupting her sleep with our music and partying. No music was being played, and it was not a house party by any means, just a few friends over. They finally gave us a write-up for it and said they had no choice because she calls so often. I was not happy about it. We loved where we lived and did not want to feel harassed all the time by this woman who, if she even heard a creak on the floor, said we were too loud. So I hatched a plan. I knew her dumb little yapper of a dog was shut away in the laundry room all day. I know this because he would bark every so often when he was in there, and we'd start to do our laundry upstairs. Around 10 p.m. every night, I would take my phone, turn on the dog whistle app, sorry dog, and put it on the floor of my laundry room directly above where this little dog was. He would not stop barking. I didn't call the office because I knew that'd get me nowhere. It'd just look like a counter-complaint. All the other neighbors, though, called the office to complain about this dog barking past quiet hours. I passed this lady again and very politely asked her if there was a way to get her dog to stop barking while we were all asleep, as it would wake up my child. She pushed past me. I was on my way down to the office to talk about our renewal coming up on our apartment when the phone rang. It was my neighbor calling to complain about my daughter and I being loud, saying that we were obviously only complaining about her dog to counter-complain. I laughed as I heard the lady respond saying, "That's odd, they're actually sitting in my office. And no, they haven't made a complaint about your dog. Various other neighbors have, though." Busted. She called to complain again when we weren't even home. The complaint stopped. She'd still mean mug us every time we passed her on the stairs, but the rest of the time we lived there was actually pleasant as she no longer harassed us. Creative and smart, pettiness at its finest. And finally, you provided proof that she was making up the complaints. And our last story. I'm taking your biggest client away. My dad has a business that me and my brother work for. He wants to leave the family business entirely to my older brother. He says it makes the most sense because my older brother's his oldest child and has been in this business the longest. He has a business degree and knows much more about the business side of the work. While I do the physical aspect of the job very well, I was a bit impulsive when I was younger, so he doesn't think it'd be a good idea for me to be in charge. To be honest, I don't think it would be either, but considering how much I contribute to this business and that I'm his son too, I think I should at least get some say in the future of the business and a stake in the company. Not even half, but some. In the end, my father said no, but that I would get some money after he died. The whole thing really pissed me off, and I was starting to get bitter continuing to work there and being around them, so I gave my 2 weeks' notice. I've just been trying to keep a neutral demeanor the whole time. This week's my last week, and Jared, the guy that represents our biggest client, was asking if I could take care of this other project next week, so I told him I'd pass it along to my brother, but that I'm not going to be working here next week. Jared and I talk a lot and are pretty friendly with each other because I'm the one that mostly works this job. We've actually hung out outside of work a few times, so he asked why I was leaving, and I just said for personal reasons. He asked where I was going to be working, and I told him I wasn't sure yet because there's not a lot of business that needs employees with my skills. Anyway, today while I'm working, Jared's boss comes down and asks me if I'll consider working for them. He said he's been thinking for a while about doing all this work in-house, but has been having trouble finding someone experienced since it's such a specialized field. He said he's always been very happy with my work, and that's why they always request me. He offered me a 3-year contract, and the salary's so much more than I would have ever made at my dad's company, plus it comes with benefits and an office. Not sure what I'll do with an office, but that seems pretty cool. I also get to pick out the equipment, and I can hire 2 employees to work under me. Overall, it's an amazing deal, but I know that losing this client will hit my family's business hard. At the same time, it's not like I was asking for it or trying to steal their client. He was the one that came to me and wanted me. I thought about maybe using this as a bargaining chip with my dad to get some say and stake in the company, but honestly, I don't want to get it that way, and I just don't want to work with either one of them anymore. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.